Today is April 5, Ukraine Media Center Reform starts its operation. My name is Vasil Samakhvalov, and our guest today is Serhii Babak, chair of the Verkhovna Rada Education, Science and Innovations Committee. Good afternoon, Mr. Serhii. Good afternoon. We will be talking mostly about the national multi-subject test this year. It's known that the registration is on. I would like to ask you about your expectations. What should we expect from this test, specifically as to the number of participants? Well, look, first of all, it's very difficult to give an estimate of the number of the participants. We expect to have more than we did have last year. This is the expectation of the Ministry of Education. They expect it to grow at least several percent. And those who will be the best, they will be able to enter the higher educational institutions for the specialty of their choice. So what your expectations are based on, that the number of the entries will grow? Because I've heard the opposite concerns related to the fact that the people who left will contribute to the decreasing number of the participants. Well, this is what we thought, that last year there would have been a lesser number of those who were subject to national multi-subject test. So what we base our expectations on is the existing demography, the number of the students who are about to graduate the high schools. We see the increase of those who wish to enter higher educational institutions comparing to the last year. So those are the assumptions that we base our expectations on. Well, as to the entry campaign, what is the number of new students we can expect? What will be the most popular specialties? How will the structure of the education change in Ukraine? Well, I think that it will be more or less in compliance with the proportions of the last years. We see the specialties that are being picked by the future students, and only after the registrations we will be able to talk about the possible change of the structure of the education system and the future students in Ukraine. Questions on the floor. Well, I have a question about the details. You said that it's difficult to forecast the number of people who will undergo this test, but do you have information about the number of graduates of the 11th grade who can potentially undergo this national multi-subject test? Well, I don't have the exact number at hand, so in order not to give you some vague numbers, I don't want to tell you anything. So how many centers will be created abroad where the future students will be able to undergo this national multi-subject test? And do we plan to expand the network of such places so that the future medical students can undergo this national multi-subject test? Well, almost in all the countries of Europe, in the United States, in Canada, there is a network of the centers created where our future students will be able to undergo the national multi-subject test in compliance with the law of Ukraine. The Ministry of Education and Science keeps working on the expansion of network of such centers. We are in negotiations with such countries as Turkey, Georgia, Netherlands to increase the number of the testing centers so that children feel it more comfortable to get there from different corners of these or that European countries, so that they have access to the Ukrainian education. As to the number of centers, I cannot tell you exactly because the network is being increased on a daily basis. It will be definitely the bigger number than there was last year. Well, another question that I'm having, are there any other metrics other than this national multi-subject test to evaluate the quality of education? How did it change after the 2 years of COVID and 1 year of war? How will it affect the quality of secondary and higher education in Ukraine? This question is way more profound than it may seem initially. So we're having a meeting of the committee in 1 hour, and we will approve the date for the committee hearings that will be dedicated to the education losses, education metrics, and education gaps existing in Ukraine. And in the middle of May, we will have the committee hearings where we will consider and review the system in detail. Unfortunately, I have to state that in Ukraine, there is no centralized, efficiently working system due to the education losses. National multi-subject test or external independent testing can be considered the only system of evaluation of educational achievements. Well, however, it's only the mechanism for entrance into the higher educational institutions. So we expect to consider to review the draft law on the final state examination resumption, because currently we only rely on the data of the international research. For example, the PISA test, which is being taken once in 4 years to understand the section of the knowledge of the 15 years old students. It's being done in all the countries of OECD, and we can compare our results with their results, and that will reflect the condition of our education system, the level of knowledge of our students in comparison with the children in Europe. So when will be the next research? Can you please remind us? Well, the last research was taken in October 2022, regardless of the big war, and in October 2023 we expect to see the full analysis of OECD of the results of this research. So the last question, you mentioned the meeting of the committee and other initiatives. Recently there were changes in the management of the ministry. What are the changes that you expect to see in the education policy of the state? Well, it's too early to talk about the first steps taken by the new management of the ministry. The process is still underway. Yesterday there was another deputy minister appointed, and most of the management personnel is new. The expectations are quite high. We expect to see the intensification of reforms of the new Ukrainian school that was suspended within the last year due to some objective and subjective factors, due to COVID and big war. But at the same time, we expect to see intensification. We expect certain steps to be taken in the direction of changes of training for the teachers and refresher training. There are key elements of the agreement that we have with the ministry, which are important in Ukraine in the context of post-war recovery. We need professionals who would be able to rebuild our country, so this reformation is urgent. We have prepared legislative changes in the committee, and we expect those documents to be implemented in coordination with the new management of the Ministry of Education. So again, I can't help but asking, in your opinion, to what number we should increase the number of students who study in professional technical specialties so we could rebuild Ukraine efficiently after the war. I would say that regardless of the fact if we have to rebuild Ukraine in the post-war period or not, I would like to mention a different thing: the number of students in the higher educational institutions and the number of people which study in professional technical institutions should correspond to the condition of economy. So the number should be in relation of 30% in the higher educational institutions and about 60 to 70% in the professional technical institutions. We have the opposite trend, and at this time we have a lot of unemployed people with higher education or people who work as barista having a diploma of a lawyer, for example, is the matter of choice of the future profession. But looking at the job market, we understand that sometimes the electric technicians or plumbers, they make way better salary than the lawyers or people of other humanitarian professions. Thank you for this conversation. Joining us was Serhii Babak, chair of the Verkhovna Rada Education, Science and Innovation Committee. Our next briefing is at 1500. We will be talking to Andriy Demchenko, spokesperson of the State Bodyguard Service of Ukraine. See you shortly.